Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a steamy Tuesday afternoon here in the state of Maine, mid-July 2023. There's adverse weather all over the country, flooding, high temperatures, air travel. For instance, it took my wife 3 days to get home from California. Friday night to Sunday. Finally arrived Sunday afternoon. And that was questionable, and if she hadn't she was standby on the flight that got her to Maine, and the next flight that she was guaranteed on was canceled right behind it, so. And she landed in a tornado warning here in Maine. Yeah, so anyway, here inside the shop, despite I don't have air conditioning, because I seldom need it. If I had the fan going, it would be even nicer in here, but still, approaching 70 degrees, I'll take it. I mean, the bench, everything feels cold. So, speaking of the bench, I bought this maybe a month ago on Marketplace, maybe a little more. On a whim, I saw it. It was priced fantastically. I dragged it home, and it didn't have wheels, and it came with, a week or so later, the piece of diamond plate that I used for a bottom shelf. It had long legs, and I put the lower square tubing and angle iron on and put the wheels on down there and used the piece of diamond plate down there. It was tough getting her in there, but I got her in there. Welded it down, and then I was hoping from the same gentleman to maybe get another piece of that cut if he had more, but that didn't work out. I have some thicker diamond plate buried outside, all rusty. I really wasn't turned on about that prospect because it's hot out. And I don't have a big sandblaster or anything, but I could have made it work. And then I thought to myself, hey, about, I don't know, sometime last winter, I made, over the last year anyway, 2 trips to the local sheet metal shop, well, a few towns over, buying his drops, and I bought a bunch of 14 gauge that nobody wanted. That's 78 thousandths thick. Probably too thick for race car stuff, but perfect for a shelf. It's going to be smooth, but do I really care? I'm going to paint it all green and pile stuff on it. So I want it to be as bomb-proof as the bottom shelf, which is probably 1/8 inch or more. It's probably 1/8 inch diamond plate. So it's, you know, substantially thicker than this, another 40 thousandths or so, plus it has, you know, the diamond pieces add strength. So in a total overkill fashion, I cut a few more pieces of angle iron, which I'm going to put halfway between. There's a piece of square tube in here. I hope you can see where I'm pointing. So you got square tubing, square tubing, square tubing, and now I got 2 pieces of angle in the middle. So I'll be able to store tank parts on there. And not motorcycle gas tanks, we're talking, you know, military tank parts. So I had the pieces and they were oversized. So when I look at sheet like this, I always wonder how I'm going to cut it. My first choice and the easiest was to walk into the other room, and I have a 30-inch Y-Song, W-Y-S-O-N-G, stomp shear. So it was a big bar you jump up and down on, and it typically will shear anything I put in there within reason. This being about the thickest I've done, and if I was only doing a couple inch piece, it would have gnawed it right off, but you know, 26 inches wide, I had to cut it down. That's a lot of load on the machine. I tried it, and it was starting to bite into it. And I hadn't eaten enough donuts to put enough pressure on it. Didn't want to break it. It suddenly seemed like a bad idea. So that was plan A. Didn't work out. Go to plan B. I could use my Milwaukee skill saw, and if I was careful, probably come out nice and smooth. But my phone's ringing. I'm hoping it doesn't interfere with the video. I'll have to pause and answer it, so hang on. And we're back. So I probably could have been successful with my Milwaukee skill saw, no different than cutting along a sheet of plywood. I believe this is rigid enough to do that. I wouldn't probably strike out across anything much thinner with a skill saw, I'm afraid it would, you know, get all bunched up and make a big mess. And so I didn't consider that plan B. Plasma cutter, another good option, but I underuse my plasma cutter. It's a massive machine. I did finally put it on a roll-around cart that took up less space, and it's relatively easy to hook up and use, and it works fantastic. It'll, 7 1 3/4, cut 1.5 inches continuous. It's way bigger than I needed, but at the time that I bought it, it was on sale, so you know how that goes, a long time ago. And I've underused it. I've only used it for a handful of projects. It's not something I normally reach for. This was previously cut with a plasma cutter because it had the, whatever you call the stuff that falls off it. You can knock right off for the most part. So, this plate had already been plasma cut, but I didn't go that route. I decided only recently, 2 weeks ago, I bought a Woodward Fab, and other people sell the same 8-inch shear. They come like 6, 8, 10, 12, maybe big hand shear. And I have it bolted to the other bench. We're going to go over there in a minute. And I'm going to compare that to the imitation Beverly shear that I have. The Beverly shear, I forget the guy's name that invented it. His name isn't Beverly. But they were built in Chicago since the 1930s, and only recently bought out by Mittler Brothers. I read this a while ago. That's a genuine article, made in America. No doubt expensive if you can find a used or a new one. So years ago now, I bought the Harbor Freight copy. No shame on me, I am part of the problem. However, I wanted to get my feet wet, like a lot of us do, to see if a Beverly shear was for me. The difference between a Beverly shear and the 8-inch hand shear that I bought recently, in my mind, and it really plays out true, is the hand shear that I bought, the 8-inch, excels at cutting perfectly straight lines. Because it's so long, you could probably cut shapes with it, but not like the Beverly shear. The Beverly shear, I could, cut a slalom into this piece. It's the design of the blade. It is, if you're only going to have one, I would choose a Beverly shear. And those, the genuine article Beverly shear, come in 3 different sizes, and the biggest one will really cut some stuff. But this particular 8-inch, what I call my straight shear, reading the Harbor Freight, the Woodward Fab, hey, there's a slight difference, I think. Reading the Woodward Fab paperwork, they pretty much claim it'll cut off a railroad tie. They give some fantastic claims of the thickness material you can cut with it if you had enough, power to pull on the handle. But this 14 gauge, 078 thickness, didn't even hesitate. And what I was curious about when I started across it is, was I just going to start a cut, it starts peeling over the piece you're cutting off. Was it going to allow me to cut 26 inches deep? Because I had to go all the way, this piece was bigger than what it is now. And I'm happy to say, piece of cake. I cut, I'll show you, one side there was only a small strip that came off, and that kind of got curled up like a French fry, but the other side had a 5 or 6 inch wide piece, and that's still almost as flat as this. It just went right down through the middle of it. So I was totally impressed with both of my imitation shears. Definitely shows you what probably the genuine article could do. I assume it could do it better. When I bought the Harbor Freight Beverly shear, I looked at it, all covered in cosmoline goop in the box, and thinking, wow, what have I done? Because it was probably $150 at the time. I think they were both around $150. Actually, the hand shear was like 139, 38, whatever it was. You can look it up for yourself. Totally impressed. So again, if the opportunity ever comes up to get a better one for a reasonable deal, I certainly will. So let's go visit the shears over there. But while I'm right here, the notch, now this is in the wheelhouse. I could have accomplished it with either shear. a whiz wheel. I mean, there's lots of ways I could have cut that notch, but I have lucked into a Kidder, Kidder. They're out of St. Johnsbury, Vermont, I believe. Hydraulic notcher, not even a hand notcher. Now, a hand notcher would be a handy rig for doing stuff like this, but my Kidder notcher will cut 7 or 8 inches, a notch that big. And 14 gauge doesn't even slow it down, it just chews it like you're chewing bubble gum. So it was easy to measure and mark out because it has to clear right here, if you can see my hand. The other guy had already notched the bottom one. You know, it's not exactly airtight, doesn't have to be, it's a shelf. And it could have been if I wanted to make odd shapes and work on it more, but in this case, I just want it to fit in there so I can tack weld it all around and call it good, and the notcher just made it really easy. And I cut it wide enough that to clear the weld that's already present, and I will weld over the weld to weld this on. So that's that. Let's go look at the shears. All right, I hope you can see me. I stuck the imitation Beverly shear, also known as a throatless shear, or a Beverly throatless shear. Say that 10 times. I have it mounted on a trailer hitch type deal, and you could probably use them like this, but it doesn't look ideal because you would definitely be in the way of using this one. But either way, this has a really short curved blade. It's probably 4.5 inches. The bottom blade's probably 4 inches. They're adjustable. I've never touched the adjustment. It's a crude looking casting. It looks like total junk. And then the Woodward Fab, I put this safety pin in so nobody comes along and cuts their finger off. I don't know if you can still see me, but so with the safety pin out, this holds down your material so it doesn't want to push up as you yank down this giant handle. And I found it interesting, I think I already mentioned it, but the small piece really curled right up. So the big pieces remain pretty decent. But same deal, the Beverly shear will also work on effortlessly on 14 gauge, and if you wanted to cut a curve, you mark out something curvy, if you can see me, but I can go right around, go right back the other way. You can cut weird shapes. I probably wouldn't try it on the straight shear, but again, each has its place. This one makes me nervous. Either the handle's hanging way out or it's up so somebody could cut their finger off. So I store it under the bench, but it just so happens the holes drilled in this welding bench were spaced out enough I could just bolt it down on one side. Ultimately you'd have 4 bolt holes, but these 2 3/8 flange bolts will do just fine, and it's temporary, so I can move it. But if I only had to have one shear, like I mentioned, it would probably be this one. But to be honest, when I took this one out of the package, I wasn't sure if I was even going to like it. But this project here has proven that it's really quick and easy. It's sitting right here. If I got to cut something straight, I can do a really nice job and not have it would really stink when you finish cutting your piece and it shows wherever it's going, and it looks like a slalom course. So my apologies that whenever I point under the bench it's kind of shadowy, kind of an effect of, despite the fact the lights are above me and there's a garage door behind me with a window, the bench is casting a shadow. So I hope you got the idea. It's kind of too hot to weld today. Back, in high school and just out of high school, when I was working at the transmission shop, I would look over at the transmission builders and they were standing in front of a fan, and that's not possible when you're out in the bays working. So it didn't take me long to want to be one of those guys. So I have a transmission to take apart, conveniently located right behind my fan, so I think I'm going to go over there for a little while and get cooled off. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in a couple days with more riveting content, as they say. I was going to casually mention hitting the subscribe button because YouTube's been mad giving me a down arrow that my subscribers have been down, and then they bounced back a little bit last week. So if you're new to the channel, give me a chance. I'll try to provide some sort of entertainment. If you've been here the whole time, thank you. Talk to you soon.